doing? Okay, we are at home stretch, and we're going to get you out here a little early. Our next panel is here, and they're with the University of Maryland. As you know, the University of Maryland College Park is in Prince George's County, and they have now provided a lot of resources that you may not know about for our nonprofit sector. They've really engaged their students. They have the Do Good Institute. So we want you to hear about that and ask some questions. In terms of capacity, I just want to share something real quick. When I was working with the Obama administration, I was invited to be on a board called the National Park Trust, and they are a nonprofit that was running under, and they needed capacity building. And one of the things that we really helped them do is to create a revenue stream. And that revenue stream went back into the organization. And if you look at their books now, that revenue stream that we created actually sustains the organization, and the grants that they apply for go directly to programs. So what we did is, I said, well, you need to market something. We have the national parks. You heard one of our panelists talk about providing a solution to a political problem. So what I did, I actually literally opened the newspaper and saw what are the problems today and how does that relate to national parks. So when I told the board, I said, nobody cares about the national parks. It's not relevant. Unless you live in Grand Canyon, you don't really think about it. And so they're like, well, what do you mean? It's really important. I said, well, it is important, but it's not relevant. When I turn on my light at home, I'm not thinking about the Grand Canyon. So he said something really interesting. He says, well, the National Mall's a national park. Rock Creek Park's a national park. We have national parks in every state. I said, okay, that's a good point, but nobody knows that. How do we make that relevant? So when I opened the paper, here's what was the headlines. Michelle Obama was just doing the Let's Move initiative. There was child obesity, and the budget for a lot of the public schools had cut their arts and physical education funding. So I'm like, oh, we have programs in the national park that can provide a solution to that problem. So we started pitching to the schools, to the governor's office, and to the White House. So long story short, now we have this national program. Every governor in the state manages it. We had a senator ratified the second Saturday of May as National Kids to Park Day. And we have a little Buddy Bison, that little stuffed animal that they sell in the parks, and all the proceeds go back to the organization. So the reason I'm sharing this with you is we keep talking about grant funding and getting funders, but we can also start thinking out of the box about ways to bring in revenue, and that happens through conversations with partnerships, understanding what's happening and what's relevant to our politicians today. So I'm going to stop talking, but I just wanted to share that because I was sitting at the edge of my seat when I heard that. And I'd like to welcome the University of Maryland Office Community Engagement Team, Gloria Aparicio Blackwell, Founding Director. Please come on stage.
Great! We still have some great people here. Okay, let's call the panel in. So I'm going to start with Alex Count. Come on down, Alex. Alex is the author of Changing the World Without Losing Your Mind. Isn't that important? Because you are here for the taking control of yourself, and you're going to be you. So I'm so glad to have the panel here. Let's give a round of applause to the panel. As I was introduced, I work at the University of Maryland, the Office of Community Engagement, and this is so exciting to be here today. I know you took a long day to absorb all this energy. So I'm going to ask a quick thing. Can you stand up? Stand up just for 1, 2, or 3 seconds. And what we're going to do is some breathing techniques. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in again. Breathe out. Isn't that great? Please sit down.
Keep breathing.
Keep breathing. Don't stop breathing. So, as I said before, Alex Count is the author of the Changing the World Without Losing Your Mind. He's a professor at the University of Maryland School of Public Policy, and he's a professor for the Nonprofit Certificate Management Program. And he is going to be selling his book through Amazon, so please check on that. Thank you, Alex, for being here. Namrata Ram Andreasen is the Assistant Director for Learning and Talent Development with the University of Maryland. Welcome for being here, too. She has been at the university for 20 years and have done a lot of work in Europe, India, and Africa. So she's well expert in this area of professional development as well. Frida Cunningham is the Talent Acquisition Manager in the University Human Resources Department at the University of Maryland. Frida has over 12 years of experience in talent acquisition. This is the time for her to hire, to looking for some talents, and I know we have a lot of those here. And Ms. June Evans is the Director of the Center for Entrepreneurial Development and Training at the Prince George's Community College. Thank you for also being part of the conversation. A good mix of higher education is here in the house at the Bowie State. So congratulations for being here. So Alex, tell me about, what is this about all this burnout? Are we burnout, yes or no? Yes, okay, tell me what could we do about this? You have the microphone right there.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, I'll just say, I think it's really important and special to having a session in this conference on self-care. It speaks to the fact that we realize that our most important asset in the nonprofit community are people. At the same time, it is done at 4 o'clock. But I'll look at it as a glass half full. Let me just tell you a story from my past. Do any of you remember the homeless activist from the 1980s, Mitch Snyder? So when I was early in my career, I was sitting at my desk, and while I spent most of my 20s overseas, but during a period I was in the U.S., on a Friday afternoon in July, in D.C., when most people are off for their weekend, I'm sitting at my desk and I get a call. And back in that era, no caller ID. This is 1991, I think. And who's on the other line? Mitch Snyder. And here it was, I was 23 years old, and I was super impressed that Mitch Snyder, the homeless activist who got Ronald Reagan to give him an abandoned federal building because he was on a 52-day fast, who'd been the front pages demanding the homeless, he's calling me, nobody, 23-year-old nonprofit guy, to get me to do one thing for his organization, which I was happy to do. I had to check with my boss. I was going to call him back on Monday. I'm so excited. I'm going to call Mitch Snyder. He's going to take my call. Me. Except it didn't work out that way. Because Mitch Snyder hung himself that weekend.
Wow.
Which I read on Monday morning as I'm waking up saying, I get to call Mitch Snyder. Nope, not so much. For years, I couldn't imagine how someone in this sector who is so accomplished, so gutsy, so willing to roll up his sleeves and call me at 23 years old because that's what was needed to do to move it down, so committed and yet so broken inside. Yet 10 years later, I had my dream nonprofit job, and I was on that same course. I was 30 pounds heavier than now. All my health things were worse than they are now. I'm 52. I was driving my employees crazy and my wife crazier. And I tell the story in my book about how I, not with one technique or one thing, but I kind of turned it around, even while growing my organization to be a $25 million organization by 2009. And so I go into this book. I have a lot of content on my website, alexcounts.com, but let me just say a couple things before I turn the mic over to this great panel. First of all, to me, self-care, I want to start with what it's not to me. Self-care is not work avoidance. Self-care is not working smarter, as if we're all not working smart already with the resources we have. It's not, in my mind, it's not something like work-life balance, a term I don't really like. And it's not something that is a one-size-fits-all, like everyone in the organization needs to do X, Y, and Z and not do A, B, and C. That's not how I like to approach it. So what do I think about it? And how do we, again, avoid this burnout, avoid where Mitch ended up? The big principle that I apply to this, and this is where it's a very self-designed self-care that I like to see in organizations, I encourage every employee to do 3 things about their work, how they relate to their work. Figure out what they want, get proud of it, get to the point that I deserve this thing that's going to make me more happy in my work, and then ask for it without any apology or entitlement. To just say, I would work better if I didn't have to take any calls after 5 o'clock. Can we arrange that as an organization? Or whatever it is for, and then you ask for it, and if you get it, you celebrate, and if you don't get it, oh shucks, maybe I'll get it next year. And an organizational culture that encourages people to figure out what self-care is for them and have the organization be their partner. I'll just tell you two little things that I did when I was leading well, first of all, I realized that my biggest problem as a professional was anxiety. Anxiety, because when I would get anxious, my decision-making would get much worse. Now, everyone's gets a little worse. Mine was a lot worse. Ask anyone that ever worked for me. And so I realized that the thing that really helped me get less anxious was physical exercise. And so, by God, for 15 years, I've been exercising 45 minutes a day, 6 days a week without fail. Now, did sometimes I go to a meeting a little less prepared than I was going to? Yes, but that was something I was willing to, and my organization backed me in that. In fact, I woke up this morning at 4:45 in the morning, so I get a 6 a.m. train from New York here, so that I could actually get in 45 minutes of exercise before I did 2 speaking engagements, this being the second one. It became a non-negotiable. Another little quirky thing, and whether that's for you or it's something else, figure out what it is that addresses your biggest kind of stumbling block as a professional, and get your organization, get yourself behind it, make it happen. I also just realized that it was just very fun for me to always have a hobby I was doing that I was a complete novice at. I don't know. It made me more humble. It made me take myself less seriously because I was always like just making rookie mistakes at what I did. And my most recent one, I got really into cooking. And by the way, no one ever told me that you could never have enough garlic. Why? You could have told me. Anyway. I also think people need to take responsibility for their well-being, and that's a lot of what the final chapters of my book are about. But organizations and the nonprofit ecosystem has their role to play. And just, first of all, we need to recognize that the kind of work you all do is hard work. These are problems that corporations, universities, churches, and the government either created or in any case they couldn't fix, so they got thrown to us. These are not easy problems, and so failure is you're going to fail at some of these things, and you need to pay people a reasonable salary to keep them at this for years and years that it takes.
You hear that? Salary.
Yeah.
Yeah, increase your salary. Okay.
Yeah. Second of all, I think we need to move from a mentality of, and I really liked what the guy from the Meyer Foundation who was here, Julian, I saw him walk out, but he was so good. But we need to move from, we're not implementing projects, we're building institutions and building movements. And how you finance that and what you put in for professional development and self-care is very different in that mentality. We need to get away from this race to the bottom where we're all competing to have the lowest overhead rates. I mean, listen, folks, do you fly on airlines if they were to brag about how little they spent on maintenance of their planes? But that's the reality. That's how this goes. And I would say a board of directors of a nonprofit should have a self-care committee. And a strategic plan of a nonprofit would be incomplete without a self-care element to it, a self-care section. Those are some of my quick thoughts about
Excellent points. So no calls after 5 o'clock. Take care of your employees is very critical, and the self-care part of your strategic plan. And that's for a reason we have this self-care in this symposium. So thank you, Diana. Thank you for the planning team for having this conversation. So Namrata, what do you think? What are other tools we can talk about?
Well, for me, self-care, I actually worked in industry. And I was working for 2 companies that were Japanese. And how many of you have read or heard articles about the amount of hours the Japanese employees can work? It's huge. It puts our overtime commitment out of scale. And it's really affected them as a culture quite a bit. They've had suicides, they've had just burnout because of this desire to just work for the sake of work. So self-care really has become a big conversation at the government level in Japan. And having worked in 2 Japanese corporations, I had to really fight hard to keep my sanity because didn't want to go on that ride, but it started for me with sort of 4 very basic principles, which I will call the 4 R's. And what do I mean by that? The first was resist. And what do I mean by resist? Resist kind of meaning you can go with the flow or really be true to yourself, your nature, your character, your principles, who you are. And actually in today's world, resisting has a whole new meaning, whether it's about us checking our phones so regularly, looking at the news, whatever it is. That concept of just resisting and being true to the authenticity of yourself, I think is just so critical. So that's the first thing I did, working in this massive institution. And Toyota is the one I worked for, with the Lexus division. I was responsible for their training programs all over Europe and the Middle East. So that was huge. The other one was rest. I think I can't stress that it's one of the most important things. Rest not only for the body, but for the mind and the spirit and the soul. You know, they say if we get our 8 hours rest, we are actually much more productive. We're almost 30 to 40% more productive. You know, it's no small thing that companies like Google have these rest pods in their campuses. You've also got situations where the Scandinavian countries are now experimenting with 3-day weekends because they've discovered that people are more productive if you take those 3-day weekends. I had a German boss who basically said to me, Nimrata, if you can't accomplish what you are supposed to do in the 8 hours we give you to work, you're not doing a good job, because you're not living your life and being able to give to others. And I think especially in the industry you all are in, which is the nonprofit, and I applaud you for what you all, each of you do, because think about it, there are 10 million NGOs out there, and there's about 100 million of each of you there. What an amazing job you all do to give to others, but it's also important to give to yourselves. And I think that for me just struck me so much when I heard one of the speakers here saying, she's not doing this for the money, she's doing it for the love of it. And giving of that love is giving, but it's also about giving that love back to yourselves. And self-care is rooted in that. So the other part of my 4 R's is revitalization. And really that has to do with something I think Alex just talked about a little bit. But really, what makes you tick? What revitalizes you? What hobbies? For him, it's cooking with lots of garlic. For me, it's cooking with a lot of ginger. So we can share recipes. But it's really understanding what you like to do. And, you know, for me, now it's about spending some quality time, taking those small minutes with my family after a hard day's work, you know, chatting with them, looking through the eyes of a child as well. We all have that opportunity to revitalize ourselves, whether it's, you know, from learning what's going on YouTube. There's so many interesting things out there. Netflix and Amazon Prime have such wonderful documentaries and things you can learn and put your mind to things that are on a positive vibration rather than the negativity that can bring us down. There's, you know, apps. You know, the self-care apps, they're the highest in the past 2 years have been the self-care apps, not the game apps, but the self-care apps. Things like, you know, Calm or Headspace or 110% Happy. These are the apps that really have made a difference. So revitalization is my 3rd R. And then the last one is repeat. Once you've got it down as to what you really want to do to avoid burnout or avoid the stress, is really repeat. My son actually was a wonderful example of this. If you do something for 90 days, apparently it becomes a habit. So I challenged him. You know, he's a teenager. You walk into his room, guess what the room is usually, for those of you who are parents? Messed up. Thank you very much. Messed up, clothes everywhere, bed not made. Ugh, just a disaster. So I challenged him. I said, Adrian, let's see if you can make your bed for at least, you know, a couple of months. And he took me up on that challenge because there was some incentive behind it as well. So, as always, you know, he wanted to take the car, he wanted to do this, so Mommy had to give in some a little bit. But he took me up on the challenge. And I'm proud to say this kid now makes his bed every day. It took 90 days for him to make that into a habit. And he is doing that every day, to the point where when I'm not making my bed every day, I just have to, you know, smack myself because he's doing it. And he tells me, Mom, you didn't make your bed. So a small example, but really it's about repeating, making whatever it is you choose to do part of a routine, part of a daily habit. So those are my suggestions for self-care and avoiding burnout. And, I think what is applicable in industry really is even more applicable in your world of the NGOs, because you're in a giving profession. I have to horribly to say this, but I think industry is in a taking profession, taking money and taking profits. But you all are about giving. And I think it's wonderful to be in that position. So give to yourselves as well generously.
Excellent. So the 4 R's, the rest, the repeat, the retrieve, and the revitalization, and say it all randomly. And it also says that if you do something for 21 days straight, it becomes an habit. So let's try to do something, just breathing for just 5 minutes or less than that every day for 21 days. You breathe every day, but just the technique to the yoga breathing. So, Frida, so tell me about how do these wonderful nonprofits can implement that in their work plans for their employees?
Well, there's a lot of things that you can do to implement some things for self-care. Being a leader, you can easily get burned out, as I saw that a lot of you, expressed initially with Alex's question. And so for me, my transition into leadership in HR, I experienced that as well. And so I had to become mindful of, this is the career that I love. I have a passion for it. I don't want to get burnt out. So what do I need to do? And so for me, what I started doing was I started reaching out to resources to find out how can I develop self-care and how can I create a balance for myself so that I can do what I love, continue to do what I love, and that's human resources. Being in human resources, you're taking care of the people, you're providing resources to leadership, and it's almost like you have to be everything to the people so that you can provide those resources, whether it be good, bad, or ugly, in the nature of human resources. So I found myself up late at night working and then up early in the morning working when I was with a larger corporation, as Namrata, she explained her experience as well. So the way that you can start to do self-care, you have to be mindful of your time and make sure that you plot out that time to have your sleep. For one, you have to get sleep in order to be ready for whatever your next day is. You have to take care of your physical health, whether it be an exercise routine or whether it be some type of meditation at home or whatever the case may be. You have to take care of your emotional health. See, I had to explain to myself that just like a car, just like a home, we all require maintenance just like that. And, therapy is okay, or, meditating, as I mentioned, for physical health, meditation helps with the mental health as well. So you can do activities like that. There's also resources for you to reach out to gain information on how you can develop, great emotional health. Also, practice mindfulness. Take moments for yourself. Be in that moment. Escape everything else. It's another way that can help you with self-care. And then also, while you're in the office, while you're at your organizations, recognize your employees for their accomplishments and all the things that they've done for the organization. That helps you as well.
So mindfulness and recognition is critical on this aspect. So June, any thoughts about this? Any ideas? And then I will ask the audience to share some of theirs as well. So let's hear you.
Yes, I actually do have some ideas. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. The community college, we have the Center for Entrepreneur Development and Training. We've been around for over 10 years. We have transitioned to different names, but at the end of the day, we work with entrepreneurs, and we consider you as leaders of nonprofit organizations as entrepreneurs. The one thing that I recommend to entrepreneurs, because regardless if you're for-profit or not-for-profit, you can easily get consumed with your passion. It can, unlike a person that works, 9 to 5 or, even a little bit more hours, an entrepreneur will work literally 24 hours a day. And we have to remember one of the things that leads us to do that. Some people say, it's my passion, it's what I was here to do, it's what I was born to do. But what I find is that if you don't have a good plan, whether it's a strategic plan as a nonprofit or a business plan as a for-profit, if you don't have a good roadmap for what drives you, you can easily keep spinning your wheels and you will work 24 hours a day. That plan is what helps you move the needle. It helps you to understand whether or not you've accomplished certain milestones. It will help you figure out, once I win this grant, what am I going to actually do with it? So what I say and to entrepreneurs, regardless of where you are, is stay true to that plan. That plan should be built in a way that it doesn't allow you to overdo it. It doesn't allow you to be so consumed with your work that you don't have time for yourself. You build a plan for growth. You build a plan that allow your business or your agency to grow without you. That's the key. When you build something based on you and you alone, you will always find yourself consumed.
Good point. So a living and breathable strategic plan, not something that you plan, have a beautiful plan just to be on the shelf. So keep that in mind. So with that, I want to hear from you now. Tell me, what are you doing to take care of yourself? Any volunteers who don't raise your hands at once, tell me. You're doing something, Rocky, right? Right here.
I'm bringing you the mic.
After retiring 14 years ago to go into the arts full-time, I soon discovered that I was working harder than I had ever worked for the federal government. Ultimately, I discovered that I have to set time limits. I cannot be on my computer after 10 o'clock at night. I never, ever, ever send emails related to my business as poet laureate on the weekends, despite the fact that my work hours are 24/7, but the rest of the world's is not.
Yes.
So you have to be mindful of who it is that you're connecting with and what makes sense to them. Mm-hmm. So much of what we do does not relate to the average persons, and I say, I'm not average, I never have been, but as a poet, there are things that my passion allows me to do, frankly, that I don't even want to reveal to the rest of the world. This is my operations mode, but the work has to get done.
Yes.
But truly, time on the clock is the first thing that you have to be in some level of control over, because it's 24/7.
Excellent, excellent point. So for that, I'm going to give you this stress ball so you can control those feelings now that you're working harder than ever. So I don't know if I can throw it that way.
Yeah, I was going to just share a couple things that I do and some stuff I try to do. So I do put on my calendar time for workout. So there's certain days I will not schedule an appointment before 10.
Yes.
The other thing for me is I can have good intentions, but if I don't have a milestone or commitment, so whether it's a 5K or a 10K or something, I'll commit to doing that at some point in the year so I have incentive to train so I don't kill myself. That's the other thing. And the last thing, and tell people you're going to do it. Because I found, for me, none of my dreams are real until I tell somebody.
Yes.
I found that whenever I tell somebody, it's like almost a contract, even though I didn't sign anything, that I'm now going to do it. So telling people what you're going to commit to do to take care of yourself, I think is healthy. And the last thing is I put time, I have these things I've learned from conferences, and what I'll do is I'll put a calendar item on my calendar that's recurring that may say delegate. So every Tuesday I have an appointment at 1:30 or 2 o'clock that says delegate, and it's a trigger to me that I have other people who can do this. I just need to get out of their way.
Excellent. That's a great point about that. Doing exercise, in order to stay away from medical and from medicine, I was recommended that I need to be going into exercise. So having it during before 10 o'clock in the morning, I was feeling ashamed to say, no, I don't want to be going to my exercise. I need to go to this meeting, because I felt that people that have kids were having more priority than me saying, no, I have to go to my exercise class. But now that I feel that the medicine is no longer going to be there, I said, this is for my well-being, wellness, so I'm taking my time for that. So I'm glad that you are doing that too, because I'm feeling, my God, I shouldn't be saying that I'm doing that. So I'm creating some other ideas. So panel, please could you react to some of those ideas?
Sure, I'm happy to start. I think that, again, philosophically, as I said before, I'm much more in favor of each person, like the woman who spoke. She's now defining what self-care is for her, and I think that for organizations to back that, rather than to say, no, that's the policy for everyone, because it might be some people want to do emails after 10, because childcare, for whatever reason, because they're a night person. So again, just support people, and I think leaders of nonprofits have a special responsibility. First of all, to make known what they need to be well, and actually communicate to the organization. I negotiate with the board if that was appropriate, or that you won't have access to me then, or here's what I did so that I'm here for a marathon, not a sprint, as a leader, and not that I expect you all to do those exact same things, but you all then figure out what you need and ask us, and we're going to do whatever we can to grant that, and to be and some things, and one little trick I learned from a consultant, I don't know, this is and we made this. I started, when you schedule meetings back to back to back to back to back, and there's hardly time to go to the restroom. I don't know about you, but with each passing meeting, I get more irritable. I make worse decisions, and people around me kind of do too. So I said, what do you think, folks? Except when it doesn't make sense, let's have all meetings be either 15 minutes, 45 minutes, or an hour and 15 minutes. So everyone has 15 minutes to rest, to go for a walk, to do whatever it is. So there's always that gap. No one is in that back-to-back-to-back mode. And people are like, sounds good to me. And then, of course, occasionally with external people, it doesn't make sense. And just there's some of those little things, but it's creating a culture where those kinds of ideas can come forward. You as the leader bring some forward, and other people bring some forward, and unless it's a really silly idea, say, let's try it, or you try it, and we'll back you, and let's see how it goes. So those are a couple reactions to those, and very good ideas.
Thank you. As I was listening to Alex, I was reflecting back on my own leadership journey. And one of the things that here at College Park we are doing is allowing teams or organizations or units to go through a program called Strength Finders. Each of us have our normal strengths. Each of us have talents. And it's a program, actually, it's a book you can get for $10 really, from Amazon or Barnes and Nobles. And it allows you to take a test, which is a self-assessment as to what one's natural strengths and talents are. And as a leader of my team, I've had everybody in my team do this, and we offer this across campus for College Park employees as well, and to anybody else who would want to take it as well. And basically facilitate a conversation about the leader working with people's strengths and talents. And it kind of goes back to something that was already said. You know, everybody has their own unique thing that they want to do, and the leader has to find that, do a hunt and find, and then coach it and bring it out. So this is a program that legitimately, as a leader, I have used, but it doesn't have to go through an assessment kind of a thing. You can do it sort of almost by conversation as a leader to know and watch what really resonates with the people you have working for you or with you. So I kind of have a three-letter acronym for that called WACK. So you watch whatever it is that is their talent, their strength, their motivation, their passion. Then A, you activate it. As a coach, that's what you're doing. So if somebody, is wanting to do that extra effort and it doesn't, absolutely put them into overdrive, fine, support it. But if you see somebody who, time management, we've got to cut this off, support it, activate it for them. And then the last part, which is the C, is really be the coach to be there. Be with them through this journey. Because as leaders, that's what we are. We are coaches to our team, to our organization. We have a vision, we have a mission, but we're really coaching everybody towards the same thing, towards their highest potential, towards the highest potential of your organization, towards the highest potential of yourself. So just remember these sort of three words, W-A-C, WAC, as a way for leaders to really promote the best and bring out the best in your teams and your people and your colleagues.
So Namrata, you just touched a good point here that leads to our professional development aspects, because June talked about the strategic development and strategic plan, and in this case we need to be prepared for that. Some people may not know how to start that journey. So we have two wonderful programs here from Prince George's Community College and from the University of Maryland, and also from the HR, the Human Resources, that can really educate what is professional development and why it's so important, and with so limited funding and resources for us to do all of that. Your thoughts?
Thank you. So you're absolutely correct. Prince George's Community College, we do have a nonprofit management certificate program. So for anyone who is a current leader of a nonprofit or starter of a nonprofit, or those that are aspiring to start a nonprofit, we have programs that will expose you to nonprofit organizations, how to manage it, how to start it, best practices, some of the necessities as, grant writing tools, fundraising tools, and even how to promote and communicate your messaging as a nonprofit organization. So those are some things that are available to the nonprofit community. Another thing is the college is launching an innovation hub that will actually start to go into effect after the first of the year. This innovation hub is also a place for nonprofit organizations. When I mention about entrepreneurship, I don't know how many of you consider yourself entrepreneurs, but an entrepreneurial-minded person, you have to have that ability to be entrepreneurial-minded in order to last, in order to keep that business going or to keep that nonprofit going. So sometimes if you are looking to just figure out how can you do things better, how can you reach your audience better, what tools, what technologies can you integrate to make your life and your employees' life better? How can you redefine your processes, your protocols, your procedures to just strengthen that organization? These are things that the Innovation Hub can work with you as a nonprofit organization as well. Even just coming up with new ways to do things, new ways to run your organization.
Excellent. So Alex.
When I was I want to talk about a similar program we have in Maryland, but I want to preface it by saying that when I set out to write my book, Changing the World Without Losing Your Mind, it was just meant to be leadership lessons. But actually the last third of it is what we're calling self-care, which I think you can also say is about investing in yourself as a nonprofit professional. And it needs to start with you. Organizations can back it. And I think one of the great things that's come up is the University of Maryland has come up with a graduate certificate program in nonprofit leadership management, launched last year. And I have some brochures about it, including financial aid and scholarships that are available. But basically, it's really well-designed program that has 4 elements. You can complete it in 2 semesters, and it's basically half masters, which you can later, if you want to build to a full master's, you can pick up where you left off. But it's a course in leadership, nonprofit leadership and management that I teach, which is, awesome. Then there's one on financial management, and again, even if it's financial management that you're building up. You don't necessarily need, track to be a CFO, but you need to understand finance on some level to be a leader in a nonprofit, a board member, a CEO. Third is on fundraising, and fourth is on strategy. And one of the things that it's been interesting is we thought that the market for this, I don't know if you felt the same way, the market for this would be people that want to get something on their resume to get that next promotion, and that's part of it. But we found that people want to be part of this because they want to be in a network of people who also want to invest in themselves as nonprofit professionals. They want to associate with people that's a priority and get their energy and their ideas and sit around a classroom with them and then meet with alumni of the program that passed through before, and how did you apply this? So there's something very powerful, I think, being part of a network of nonprofit professionals that don't take that for granted, but say, every day, every quarter, every month, I'm going to invest in myself so I can still be doing this or doing better, in 10 or 15 years.
And that's another great point too about the School of Public Policy also have a program called for Philanthropy, where it's a class where the students can invest $10,000. And I heard early a person was asking about small funds like 5,000 or 10,000, and you can participate so the students can try to identify organizations here in Prince George's where they can invest that funds, whether it's at one time for one organization or they can spread it out through many others. So I encourage you to take a look at that, because you can submit your name so they can put it in a list of participants so the students can select what is resonate to them for them to invest. So this is the way to be teaching the students how to be philanthropists in the long run. So
I would like to also share with you all some other resources. You've heard about 2 wonderful graduate-type certificate programs here. We also here in the College Park campus have much shorter trainings, for lack of a better word, that can be anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. We also have brown bags that, quite frankly, some of them are free for people to come in about just your general financial planning, retirement planning, things like that. That's also part of self-care. In terms of skill-based things, we are able to put together things like using data to make data analytics to make business decisions. That's really quite big these days. How do you really look at data and make smart decisions? Another one is something called design thinking, and I actually heard one of the previous people who had a nonprofit talk about that. Design thinking is a 4-hour workshop that really allows you all to reimagine something. And I'm working with a nonprofit right now who wants to be able to use this methodology to spark some ideas within their potential clients so that they can support them in whatever their service offerings are. But it's really about unleashing the power of creativity within the nonprofit world and way of thinking. So design thinking is another 4-hour workshop. Basic things like time management, communication skills, delegation, defining a vision and a mission for those of you who are starting up. So these are type of courses we do have, not really as certificate programs, but one-off. And, for free stuff, the internet, YouTube has a lot of good stuff too. So I do encourage you all to go on our Human Resources website for the University of Maryland College Park and see what's out there. Just type in human resources and then training, and you can see what we offer for free, and then other courses that we offer for a very nominal amount, $75 a person. So it's just something for you to know that there are these resources out there for you, or as a leader, or as a person who started up a nonprofit to profit from.
So with that, I know you have a lot of information coming in, a lot of overload information right now, but I wanted to give that time for you to ask some questions to the panel. Any questions? No questions? Oh, right, back there.
Thank you. Hi, you all. My name is Ciara Jackson. I currently serve as an ambassador for an organization called She Should Run. It's a nonprofit organization that encourages women to run for political office. I wanted to chat with you all a little bit, or ask the question of, when did you realize that you all were not practicing self-care, and how were you able to self-correct and be able to change that in your life?
Good question.
When I hit the wall, seriously, it kind of goes back to really being self-aware. And, for me, I realized I was ignoring my personal life, my family, and just giving everything to work. And while the passion was there, I realized I also needed to invest in myself, otherwise I couldn't invest in anybody else. Or in my company, or for my family. There's a wonderful sort of a quote or saying that has resonated with me, which I would share with you all. It has to do with, we are given the ability on this planet to borrow its resources, but we have a responsibility to give back. And we have the same for ourselves. We give of ourselves, but we have the responsibility to give back to ourselves as well. So I always keep that in the back of my mind, because resources are scarce. Energy can be transformed into something that is constructive or destructive. So I would rather choose to make it constructive and then reinvest it back in myself. So that's my answer.
I think it's on.
It on? No.
No, I think you turned it off. I think they're
It takes a
controlling.
little bit of delay.
Yeah.
So you pass that. Uh-huh.
So for me, I've already kind of gave the example of me experiencing burnout within my career. And so self-care for me is ongoing, it's continuous. And one of my aha moments was when I realized that I had to focus on my journey as opposed to my destination. So focusing on my journey made everything make sense for me. And it allowed me to know that this is something that I have to make sure that I invest in for myself as far as self-care goes. And I will continue to do that throughout my life, in whatever I do.
Just for me, and there's this pivotal moment where I just realized the jig is up, and I've just not taken care of myself. And part of it is just actual vanity. Some people can put on 30 pounds and it doesn't show, and I wasn't one of them. And I just looked in the mirror one morning and I said, "Who is that?" Mm-hmm. And my wife is actually a trained dietitian, and she hates giving people advice about food because it's what she did clinically, and no one, of course, follows her advice. And she thought I wouldn't, but I begged her, and she put me on a plan. And so part of it was that, and part of it was, all of my employees were mad at me, and I finally realized that it wasn't their fault. That I had some role to play in that. And there was just a pivotal moment at the end of the year 2000. And some part of me, I don't consciously remember thinking this till later, but I'm about to lose my dream job. Like, there's stuff happening here it's not sustainable. And so, you know, I started again a series of, as I talk about in my book, just a series of little experiments to like do different things. Not all of them worked, but it was all grounded in that I just realized that this wasn't working. I was on that downward. I might not end up like Mitch Snyder ended up, but it wasn't going to be pretty regardless. And that moment, everything kind of changed around then, right at the end of the year 2000 for me.
So we don't have to wait all the time, gain some weight to start thinking about that we need to do something for ourselves. That's the moral of the story. So it's important that we always have to be thinking about that. And one thing, please learn to say no. Let's say all aloud, no. No, I can't do this. Sorry, I'm glad that you think about me, but we had to say no. I'm trying to practice. I see my members of my team, they say, yeah, Gloria, yeah, right, because I always say yes. So we need to practice that. Well, it's almost time. So one last thing that you would like to share with the group, if you have any thoughts, last minute thoughts.
Let's see, last thoughts. Well, first I want to commend each of you who came out to the symposium. Can you guys give yourself a hand? Yes. This shows that you are committed to what you say you're going to do. I know this is probably a sacrifice for many of you, for those who are doing the work part-time and those of you who have taken the plunge to do it full-time. I just say stick to the plan. Nonprofits, you're mission-driven. Do not be swayed by the dollar, the grant that's right in front of you. Don't try to change your mission to fit that opportunity. If you are true to your mission, you will then be drawn to those grants that support your mission. When you start chasing the dollar, then things start to go haywire. So my recommendation is stay true to your mission. You're mission driven.
Thank you. Yeah.
I just want to ask all of you that you basically focus and know exactly what you're aiming for. And then also be persistent when it comes to barriers, you know. Don't let the barriers, take you out. Become confident when taking risk. And then also, always support your intellectual self-care. Crave knowledge, crave, learning more. Utilize some of the resources that the panel up here has given you. Thank you.
Thank you.
For me, it's something my colleague actually said already, but it's focus on the journey, not the destination. The destination will come, but there's an amazing amount of experiences you can get on the journey. And remember, we are humans, but it starts with us being the you part of the human. So go within to be strong enough to give outwardly as well.
Well, my big message is to try to drive home, and at a very deep level, is that you deserve it. You deserve to invest in yourself as a nonprofit professional, even if you've made mistakes, even if you've, and not everything has gone perfectly, because we're given the hardest problems in society to deal with. You deserve it. You deserve to invest in yourself. Your organization you deserve to have your organization support that. And just really remember that. And if you have any doubts, or someone disputes it, say the guy at the Bowie State, told you that was the case, that you deserve it. I don't know. The other thing I'll just say is there are lots of resources out there, and don't get overwhelmed with them, but just choose one and engage. If it doesn't work for you, then try something else. You have these 2 graduate certificate programs, and obviously I've put down, what some of the highlight things that work for me in my book and my website. And one other little thing that I've started is kind of fun, is I come into nonprofits and I do a little lunch and learn, for which I charge nothing. Just because I enjoy being in these conversations around self-care and leadership. And if you're interested in it, come back and talk to me. And with the program, but there are lots of opportunities there, and you don't have to have a comprehensive program from day one. Just start as an organization and as a person, and just try to, have a goal that you and the people around you, that each year you're at least a little bit healthier physically, emotionally, spiritually. It doesn't have to be big, but make sure you're at least a little bit healthier, and good luck.
Excellent, yes, and another point is too, let's give him an applause here, is about the aspect of thinking about building capacity and getting more network done out there. Think about the Leadership Prince George's, Leadership Maryland, Leadership Greater Washington. They sometimes have a price tag, but they also have some scholarships that you can apply for. So think about those things too in order for you to increase your next set of networks so you don't have to do this work alone. So with that, let's give it a round of applause to our wonderful panel. Thank you for sticking with us. I'm hoping that you're getting some good techniques here. Enjoy. I know you're going to be facing traffic, but hey, happy hours out there somewhere in the world. So thank you. I know that's what you wanted for reason we're just finished. So thank you.
Yes, and Gloria, we agree with you. I will not be long. I'm just going to say thank you on behalf of our county executive, Angela Alsobrooks. This is a part of her initiative to say, let's get everyone at the table. We'd like you to please leave your questions that you didn't have a chance to ask out at the front. Also do your evaluations. And we, again, thank you. And guess what? We're looking forward to the next conversation. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you all.